The Forbidden Book of Enoch from the Bible tells the true story of mankind. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. In early 1946, in the region now known as the West Bank, a group of Bedouin teenagers tended their sheep and goats near the ancient settlement of Qumran. To pass the time, monotonous as it was, they tossed around the rocks they found scattered across the rugged desert terrain. When one such stone was thrown into the dark expanse of a cave, the teenagers were surprised to hear a loud crushing noise echoing from within. Exploring, they found a collection of large clay jars, one of which had been broken. Although they didn't know it at the time, these teenagers had made a historic discovery. Inside the jars were a number of ancient scrolls. In the years following this discovery, archaeologists, historians, and treasure hunters found additional scroll fragments in 10 other caves in the area, their composition forming an estimated 800 to 900 manuscripts known collectively as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Among these manuscripts were large portions of a mysterious non-canonical religious text that had long been forgotten. It was called the Book of Enoch. In its entirety, the Book of Enoch consists of 5 books: the Book of Watchers, the Book of Parables, the Book of Astronomy, the Dream Visions, and the Epistles of Enoch, containing about 100 chapters. These chapters tell the story of the 7th patriarch in the book of Genesis, Enoch, father of Methuselah and grandfather of Noah, the same Noah of the biblical story of Noah's Arkansas. However, this was not the biblical story of Noah's Arkansas. In fact, the Book of Enoch gives an entirely different account of the events leading up to the Great Flood of Noah's time, that is, an entirely different doctrinal history. The story of the Book of Enoch. It tells a story of the Watchers, explained in biblical terms as fallen angels sent to earth to watch over humans at an undefined and ancient time. Unfortunately, far from just looking at humans, these Watchers became infatuated with human women and soon began engaging in depraved sexual acts with them. The Book of Enoch tells of the children born of this cross between Watchers and humans, called Nephilim. These Nephilim were described: giants and savages who endangered and plundered mankind, or, to put it another way, supernatural, man-eating giants. Angered by what the Watchers had done, those described as gods chained them in an underground prison deep within the earth. Enoch became the middle of the closed Watchers and gods. The book describes Enoch's journeys between heaven and earth in his intermediary role, how he flew with the angels and saw the rivers and the mountains and even the ends of the earth above. However, despite Enoch's intervention, the gods decided that the atrocity the earth had become must be punished. Of course, the punishment would be a great flood. This flood would destroy the Nephilim and cement the Watchers in their prison. First, however, Enoch would be taken to heaven in a chariot of fire. Interestingly, the book of Genesis, which speaks of the great flood of the Abrahamic traditions, refers to the Nephilim in chapter 6, describing the heroes who were of old, warriors of renown. This is not the only place in the biblical canon where the Nephilim appear. In Numbers 13:32-33, the Israelites visit a land inhabited by the Nephilim, who are so large that they make the Israelites look like locusts. Of course, much in the Bible is seen in modern times as allegorical, meaning more philosophical myth than historical record. There is archaeological evidence of a great flood in the earth's past, one that, incidentally, is also spoken of in countless religious and cultural traditions around the world. Had there actually been beings like the Nephilim giants, surely there would be similar evidence? Evidence of the giant Nephilim. This is not a phenomenon limited to the United States. Similarly, enormous skeletons have been found in the Amazon rainforest, Africa, and elsewhere. In fact, stories about giants permeate human history and tradition. The famous explorer Marco Polo once wrote of a race of giants in Zanzibar who were so strong that they can carry up to 4 ordinary men, while the people of modern Tangier, Morocco, once claimed that the founder of their city was a giant named Antaeus. According to Irish myth, the so-called Giant's Causeway on the northeast coast of Ireland, an astonishing 40,000 interconnected stone columns, was built by the Irish giant Finn MacCool so that he could walk across the sea to Scotland to fight with another giant. Furthermore, tales of giants punctuate Norse legends and ancient Greek mythology. Perhaps if giants did exist, as these records and countless cultures suggest, then the Book of Enoch is less allegorical than it might initially appear, less fantastical myth, and more grounded in real history. It is interesting to note that for centuries the Book of Enoch was an important part of both Christian and Jewish religious traditions. Many, if not most, sects accepted the book as scripture. Furthermore, some have even suggested that the Book of Enoch was the inspiration for the Book of Genesis, due to their many parallels and overlapping stories. The question is, what happened? Why is the Book of Enoch in the Bible censored? To answer this, we must go back to the first centuries after the death of Jesus Christ. Far from the rigid canon of 39 Old Testaments and 27 books of the New Testament that we know today as the Bible, originally there were numerous Gospels and religious texts that made up the broad spectrum of the Christian tradition. As the Christian religion grew after the death of Jesus, the growing Christian church had to know what texts should be read and followed, what teachings should be applied, what texts would be considered acceptable and divinely inspired. The church needed, from diversity, to create uniformity, they needed an official canon. In a story popularized in the modern era by Dan Brown's seminal work The Da Vinci Code, this canonization is remembered as happening, somewhat ominously, at the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century. There, the story goes, Emperor Constantine and other high-ranking church authorities shaped the Christian canon to suit their own secret agenda. Unfortunately, this is not historically correct. The Council of Nicaea did not determine the official Christian canon. Don't blame Dan Brown. The renowned philosopher Voltaire made a similar claim in the 1700s. But while the story may not be accurate, it is accurate in a sense. Senior members of the church certainly picked and chose what to include in the official biblical canon. They argued, pulled strings, cast their opponents as heretics, and almost certainly sought to expand their own power. It simply did not take place at a single council, but rather as a much longer process between the 1st and 4th centuries. It is generally understood that by the end of the 4th century, the process was complete and the Bible was officially established, minus the Book of Enoch. How could something as influential, if not vital, as the Book of Enoch be left out? To answer this question, one might examine other Gospels that were also censored from the final product. Consider the Gospel of Peter, a fragment of which was found in Egypt in 1886, which tells the long-lost story of a resurrected Jesus leaving the tomb and features 2 gigantic angels and a floating cross that speaks, and they heard a voice from heaven, saying, "Thou hast preached unto them that sleep." And an answer was heard from the cross, "Yes." Or, consider the Gospel of Mary, that notorious work in which Mary Magdalene is named not only as one of Jesus' disciples, but also his favorite, perhaps even his wife. In this Gospel, the disciple Peter asks why he and the other disciples should listen to Mary, a woman, to which Matthew replies, "If the Savior made her worthy, who are you then, on your part, to set her aside?" Surely the Savior knows her very well. That is why he loved her more than us. Like the Book of Enoch, these Gospels tell extraordinary and challenging stories of history. Perhaps then it should come as no surprise that these texts were censored by the early powers of the official Christian canon. Who is Enoch in the Bible? It stands to reason that the Book of Enoch might have been completely forgotten if not for its survival in small Orthodox sects of Ethiopian Jews. In fact, the only pre-modern version of the text was written in Guizi, an ancient African language. This version was used by Richard Lawrence, Archbishop of Cashel, in 1821 to produce the first English translation of the book, the version used to inform the study of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Curiously, although the Book of Enoch was omitted from the established Christian canon and subsequently forgotten in all but the most obscure corners of religious tradition and theological scholarship, the Bible contains numerous references to it. There are references to the Nephilim in Genesis and Numbers. Genesis also contains an extended account of Enoch's lineage. The book of Hebrews describes how God took Enoch, apparently a reference to his being taken to heaven in a chariot of fire before the great flood. Jude, meanwhile, contains an entire paragraph transcribed almost word for word from Enoch, suggesting that the book may have actually served as an early inspiration for the canonical biblical texts. Furthermore, Corinthians 11:5-6 contains instructions from St. Paul for women to cover their heads while in church. This is apparently a direct reference to the fact that the Watchers in the Book of Enoch were attracted to women with long flowing hair. This is a practice that remains in Roman Catholicism and Islam to this day. Although it was censored, even forgotten, the Book of Enoch never really disappeared. There is something deeper behind the Book of Enoch and its incredible stories, something that goes beyond simply whether or not it is part of the Christian canon. It has been pointed out that Enoch, the seventh patriarch of the Bible, appears to reflect the seventh antediluvian king, Enmendarana, in the Babylonian tradition. The ancient Greeks believed that Enoch was the same as the god Hermes, while the ancient Egyptians had someone similar in their own tradition. The examples could go on, and therefore it must be asked, why does Enoch, whatever his name, still appear in the traditions of the ancestors? The answer may go back further than the Greeks, Egyptians, or even Babylonians, back to the ancient Sumerians. Anunnakis, those who came from heaven. According to Sumerian texts, the earth was visited by a group of supernatural beings sometime in the distant past. These visitors are described in Sumerian tradition in a manner similar to the descriptions of the seers in the Book of Enoch. Instead of watchers, however, the Sumerians called these beings Anunnaki, which literally means those who came from the heavens. To the Sumerians they were gods. To modern thinkers like Zecharia Sitchin and Eric von Daniken, they were an ancient race of extraterrestrials come to Earth. Interestingly, the Sumerian texts tell stories of these Anunnaki, like the Watchers, beginning to interbreed with human beings, creating an entirely new species in the process, mirroring the creation of the Nephilim. Like the gods of the Book of Enoch, the Anunnaki became angry at the state of the earth and caused a great flood. Is it possible that the Book of Enoch, as well as other related traditions, are simply retelling the older Sumerian story of the Anunnaki? Inexplicable rapid human evolution. Consider the agricultural revolution, which began around 10,000 BC, when human beings transitioned from a hunting and gathering lifestyle to one of agriculture and settlement. According to the historical record, since 9500 BC, in what is now modern Kurdistan, barley, wheat, and rye have been cultivated, oats, peas, and lentils were cultivated, while goats and sheep were domesticated. By about 500 years after that, copper and lead smelting was taking place in the region, along with weaving and pottery making. Furthermore, this ancient Kurdish culture was the first to develop a script, being one of humanity's earliest literate societies. Some have asked how human beings could have made this leap so quickly. Interestingly, the Kurdish people claim to be descended from the children of the jinn, children of the spirits. Is this an ancient cultural reference to procreation between Anunnaki and human women? According to the Sumerians, it was the Anunnaki who brought advanced knowledge and technology to human beings, lending a helping hand, so to speak, to the advancement of human civilization. Many have suggested that this explains seemingly impossible monuments like the pyramids of Giza or Teotihuacan, those ancient monuments of extraordinary sophistication that is completely inexplicable by the cultural and social circumstances of historical history. Perhaps this also explains how human beings were able to move from nomadic hunter-gatherers to sophisticated civilizations in an insignificant amount of historical time. Correlation between the Book of Enoch and the Anunnaki story. Incredibly, the Book of Enoch describes an almost identical process taking place, with the Watchers mirroring the Anunnaki, giving humans advanced knowledge and technology. They teach men metallurgy and mining, science and medicine, how to read and write, and how to read the stars. They teach people to wear cosmetics and make jewelry and reveal the secrets of the art of war. The Book of Enoch 8:1-3a says, "And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives, shields, and he made known to them the metals of the earth, and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony and beautification of the eyelids, and all manner of precious stones, and all coloring tinctures. And much unbelief arose, and they committed fornication, and went astray, and became corrupt in all their ways." Did the Book of Enoch, in this way, reflect and relate the story of the Anunnaki? It is interesting that the most common example given of something completely inexplicable by the cultural and social circumstances of historical history, i.e., Something that the Anunnaki must have certainly helped the ancient people is the Egyptian pyramids. According to the ancient Arab historian al-Makrizi, these pyramids were built by a king named Sorid, who lived before the Great Flood. By the way, Sorid translated into Hebrew is Enoch. Consider elsewhere in the Book of Enoch, and a chapter where Enoch testifies to the secrets of lightning and secrets of thunder. Some have suggested that this chapter is meant to illuminate the enigmas of energy and electricity. Again, this relates directly to the Anunnaki, who many believe have been trying to reveal similar secrets to human beings through culture circles for some time. In our latest video, called Crop Circles Contain Blueprints for Free Energy Devices, we talked about how crop circles have appeared around the world in recent decades that detail complex mathematical equations, magnetic diagrams and motors, mechanical routers, and the field lines of an electric charge, the work, according to some, of the Anunnaki. In fact, consider Enoch's description of his journey to meet the gods, bearing in mind the UFO sightings that often accompany and complement these culture circles. "I was taken to a kind of floating palace," Enoch said. "It was huge, like carved glass. The floor had glass tiles. Through the floor you could see the stars we were crossing." With this in mind, one might wonder if the chariot of fire that took Enoch before the Great Flood was not, in fact, an alien spaceship. Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden. It may seem hard to believe that stories as astonishing as these, of the Watchers and the Anunnaki and Nephilim giants, stories that permeated ancient cultures for thousands of years, should be largely forgotten. The Sumerians largely erased from the pantheon of ancient civilizations, the Book of Enoch censored from the biblical canon. However, given how these stories fundamentally reshape human history and redefine what human beings are, their exclusion is perhaps no surprise. However, perhaps these stories were not, in fact, completely erased. Consider the well-known biblical story of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden. Read it not literally, nor philosophically, but as an allegory. Read it metaphorically. God creates Adam to watch over the earth, just as the gods send the watchers in the Book of Enoch. From Adam's rib, God creates Eve. Adam and Eve procreate, representing the cross between watchers and human females. Adam and Eve are told they can eat anything they want in the Garden of Eden, except the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Of course, they eat from the tree of knowledge, representative of observers bringing advanced technology and knowledge to human beings that they may not have been mentally evolved enough to handle. Just as eating from the tree of knowledge gave Adam and Eve the knowledge of God, so the Book of Enoch described how the Watchers revealed the eternal secrets kept for heaven, which men strove to learn. Reading the story of Adam and Eve in this way, it is easy to see parallels between it and the Book of Enoch. Perhaps the people who wrote the story of Adam and Eve were simply retelling the stories of the Book of Enoch in their own way, retelling the Sumerian story of the Anunnaki as they had before many religions and cultures, inserting this crucial piece of human history into their own religious canon so that these ancient records could continue to exist. What is human history? Is this what is meant by officially sanctioned history books? Or is it something deeper, something more incredible, if perhaps forgotten? Perhaps the answer has been hidden in plain sight all along.